Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Feedback Friday, and I have adjusted the lighting again on my camera. You guys will notice that big flare in the corner there. This is what happens when I try to light the background of my shots. And so I'm just gonna scooch this image closer, still working on the lighting, having major problems with it. Thank you for the suggestions during the week of how to make it better. I have tried most of them. I am just really pale and shit happens sometimes. But let's get right into your feedback for the week because there was a lot of it and there was a lot of high quality feedback. Nice problem to have, but I don't want this to go on forever. I'm still trying to keep my videos shorter. I want to first address a commenter who challenged me, and rightly so, on my overgeneralization of treatment of POWs during the Revolutionary War. Yes, of course, I was overgeneralizing. I do not deny that at all. I appreciate that this commenter acknowledged my greater point, that they understood that. I have no problem with people going history nerd on me and adding detail as long as you acknowledge what you're trying to say. So thank you for that. I'm not going to get into the weeds on that comment. It was very interesting. They are, from what I understand, completely accurate. And basically the greater point was that treatment of prisoners during the Revolutionary War was strongly based on the ethics of the commander. There was no wider discipline or whatever. So yes, it was patchwork. And I just want to correct that for the record, or clarify that for the record, because this commenter is absolutely right. And I think that comments like this add to people's understanding of an issue, and that's great. I wish I could do a history channel. I love history, and unfortunately when you're trying to do things fast, you overgeneralize to make a point and say things that aren't entirely accurate, and this is something that bugs me too. So, stating for the record, yes, commenter, thank you. That's great. I may just start publishing really great comments on my website, leannakersner.com, so people can see these things. What do you guys think about that? Taking the names, everything off of just publishing the text. Because I think that would be kind of cool to curate the best comments that are really interesting, because especially the last few weeks, there's been so much good stuff, so much thought-provoking stuff. I haven't had a chance to address them all, especially when I do the live format, and people really like the live format, but then the feedback throughout the week suffers in that people are asking live questions, and that's really great. So what do you think about this as a solution? Because there are some really great comments on this channel, and I'd like to be able to share them. However, I don't necessarily want people to get dogpiled or yelled at or attacked in comments. So what do you think? And how do I give credit in this system without giving blame? This is the ongoing challenge, and this is something everyone on YouTube deals with, and everyone on YouTube has a different way of doing it with different outcomes. There's no one right way, there's no one wrong way. What can work amazingly well for one person doesn't work at all for somebody else. And this segs into the next thing. There's a lot of feedback about my ongoing attempt to address this clarity issue that some people have. And this is what I've determined based on this week, is that it's just different types of people engage with media differently for different reasons. And that's totally valid, and it's something I've got to figure out. I think where I'm at right now is it's just something I kind of have to be more aware of. I may take a I may take a page out of Rich's book from ReviewTechUSA and give somebody a pseudonym. Like, instead of just saying this person, it's like, Tom said this. The person's name wasn't Tom, but it makes it easier to follow for the purposes of storytelling. I may try that. Others, I gotta be really careful with, and I can't stress this enough. There are a few fan bases that continue to make demands of me through comments and things like that, and I've intended to address it a couple of times, but Friday was one of those times we just didn't get to it. But my big concern is the way I got into trouble with these groups in the first place was mentioning them. And then they took a more negative opinion, a more negative interpretation of what I had said than I intended. And once that happens, there's nothing you can do. Then I start getting called a liar for saying, no, that's not actually what I said. You are paraphrasing what I said. That's not what I said. So I'm sure you can understand why I'm hesitant to do it again and just end up in this whole mess. So there are some things I can't talk about for that reason again. And if you want me to do something with another YouTuber, there are good ways and there are not so good ways to approach that. Demanding I do a collaboration with somebody isn't going to work, because first of all, it's not just up to me. And, you know, it's also, I have to believe that there's something productive coming out of this thing. I've said this over and over and over again. And so there are off-air discussions. There has to be a shared topic that both people want to talk about. There has to be a common understanding of how to approach, because that sort of debate versus discussion style, there's nothing wrong with people who enjoy debating. I just think there's enough of that. I don't do that. And I think that once you let that genie out of the bottle, it becomes a very different thing. I explore concepts. I don't try to be the final word. I don't try to win. I don't try to be the only right voice. There's too much of that in gaming as far as I'm concerned. So there is a process that happens when you're trying to work things out. And some of these groups, and I know I'm being vague again, but I'm doing that deliberately because if I say their names, they go nuts. Like, the fan base goes nuts, and I end up on these websites being accused of lying when it's all just a big misunderstanding. And because there's no communication, there's one fan base screaming at another fan base. We don't have this conversation. Like, whoa, go back and look what I actually said. I didn't actually say what you're claiming. And in one case, a website made a correction and said she didn't mean to lie. She claimed she was just confused. Lying is an intentional act. How does someone not mean to lie? And these are the things that continue to baffle me. And so, obviously, when someone does that, I'm not going to participate in content with them or with their associates, especially on their channels where they're getting the monetization. And that's one thing I am talking about back and forth with Rich. We're probably going to share that interview on his channel too. Don't hold me to that. I don't know, but that probably, he has a much bigger audience than me. And, you know, one of the things that you see at everything you go to about how to do things on the internet, it's don't hoard your content. So I don't have any problem with that. I think that's actually a good thing, and I appreciate it. And moving on to that, I am so happy with how that went, that interview with Rich. It was a great conversation between two gamers about gaming related stuff. It was exactly what I envisioned for the Dialogue Options series when I first started doing it. Two people who love games talking about games from an enthusiast perspective. I thought that was so great. I was so happy with it. I am so grateful to him to agree to do it with me, breaking the law of YouTube that you talk to people who have a similar follower count to you or above. You don't talk to people lesser. That is an unwritten rule of YouTube too, believe it or not. Don't help other people. So I'm very happy with that. I thought it was a really good discussion, and I loved the back and forth of ideas that happened. It was just exchanging opinions, and no one had to be right and no one had to be wrong at the end of it. It's, I see your point, but oh no, I agree with, like, you see this point, I see this. It was two adults having a conversation, and it was wonderful. And the comments that came out of a lot of videos this week had that similar feel of it was adult having a conversation. So moving on to another question, one person asked, what's wrong with idolizing good-looking people? And this is a question that came up in the, the Beyonce video I did. And was not prepared for the amount of Beyonce. I always forget how much Beyonce hatred, how much hatred there is for pop stars. And to me, pop stars are pop stars. Perhaps I have a different perspective because I worked in music programming, but I don't find pop stars, no matter what they do, they're not setting laws for the rest of us. I don't understand why investing in hating them does anything. Perhaps someone can enlighten me on that. What does hating, like actively hating and attacking on the internet a pop star, what does that do for you? This is very different than a celebrity like Ashley Judd who goes on a TED Talk and says inflammatory things. I get that. I understand why someone, when they step into that forum, as Rich said, their ideas are open to be challenged. Their ideas, yes, not attacking them as people, not attacking their person or making assumptions about their character, their motivations, just looking at their ideas and judging the merits of them. That is different than someone writing a song about single ladies and people having equally strong opinions about that. So enlighten me on that one, because I don't get it. But what somebody asked was, what's wrong with idolizing good-looking people? And my answer is nothing. The issue is the narrow confines of what is considered good looking, and the fact that, at least in my professional experience, what Hollywood believes is good looking doesn't match what the regular person sitting down for the purposes of entertainment sees as good looking. And this was something I learned through doing. I was the senior producer and eventually the co-host of a late night show that had women in a hot tub. They were all of age and, go-go dancers, and we interviewed porn stars, and we had all this hyper, some people say hypersexualized, I just say sexy content, but we had diversity of body type. We got as many women of color involved as we possibly could. Not as easy in some cases as you may think because of more conservative family structures in certain cultures. We hired a dancer who eventually went on, she went in the hot tub once too. No, she was a hot tub girl. That's right. She was in the hot tub, but she eventually went on to become Miss Pakistan World. And I learned the hard way how some stylists are not as aware that women of different body types have different body proportions, and we don't hide that. We celebrate that. And our most popular dancer was like size 16, and she was like built out to here and had hair out to here, and she was a beautiful girl. But hiring somebody like that in the media at the time is something of a risk. And there seems to be this echo chamber in the media where, because this is what people have found attractive going back to, well, it's changed, hasn't it? Because Marilyn Monroe now would be told to lose weight, get toned, get fit. I hate the word toned. Tone is a sound to me, the whole tone, like muscle, like why? If you're an athlete, you're going to be naturally, less body fat. If you're a swimmer, you look like a swimmer. If you're a weightlifter, you look like a weightlifter. If you're a gymnast, you look like a gymnast. But a gymnast doesn't look like a weightlifter. So what does fit mean? And this is the big question. This is the problem with the current beauty standards. And I think that video games have a real opportunity to do better than TV and film, simply because it is an issue that people who look different don't get called in for the auditions. They do not have the access to the networks that get people those auditions for those parts. But we're building characters in the ground up in video games, right? And so we can be very different in the way we choose to depict beautiful. And I personally love those pug ugly characters. You know, I love the characters that are all scarred up, you know, the characters in Gears of War, and although they were probably unnecessarily ugly just because of technical limitations in the first game. But I look back in Baird's face in the original Gears of War, I didn't realize how much that, no, hide the lack of detail, because you see the remaster and oh yeah, Baird looks like a person now. But that's different than what I'm talking about. The, you know, the warrior woman, I forget her name, but, you know, she's older, and so she got her hair all shot with gray, and she's got animal scars, like, all over her, and there's somebody else who's burned, and those are amazing to me, and the characters are still regal and still very, you know, glamorous, as much as a, you know, prehistoric person can be glamorous, but they look notably different than your average supermodel or Sports Illustrated swimsuit character, right? And if you're going to put a character in a game who is a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, then she should look like that. If you're going to put a character in who's a teacher, she should not be using the same body model as the swimsuit model, because first of all, models are freaks of nature, and I won't get into the various reasons. As somebody who does modeling, a very long torso is essential. I happen to have one, and what that allows you to do is it actually allows you to twist and contort your body into those odd S-shaped twisting movements. They call it the page 3 girl twist, or the sunshine girl twist here. You basically put your feet, you see my legs here, you put your legs like almost at a 90-degree angle to the camera or more, and then you twist to face the camera. And what that does is minimizes your waist. It makes it look thinner. If you don't have enough space to twist, if your rib cage is sitting right on top of your hip bones, you can't do that. You don't have the, you know, the cinch in to look the way. And the other thing about modeling is you have to be a certain height, and you have to be a certain size to fit into samples. And those are just the requirements of the job. Not everybody has to be a model, you know? If you're creating games with characters with interesting backstories, they're not all gonna be models. And okay, if you want to make a character like, you know, Lollipop Chainsaw or Bayonetta or somebody like that, where their sexuality is part of it, go for it, because that's part of the amusement of Lollipop Chainsaw. To me, it's kind of a spoof. You know, she inhabits the same kind of world that somebody like Harley Quinn does. That chick's kind of psycho, right? But the issue is not, people are always going to seek after beauty. We just don't agree about what beauty is. And that's the big issue right there. But clock's ticking, moving on. I hope that sort of answered the question. That is something that is going to be unpacked in the Lady Bits series. That's one of the issues is going to be dealt with. I don't remember if it's director or in Tangent, but that your question will be answered more then. People mentioned suggestions for, I brain farted and couldn't think of a kind of iconoclastic male musician that developers should be like, because I have no fucks to give. David Bowie was mentioned, Marilyn Manson. Yes, those are the people. Those are the type of people that I was thinking of, who just, Bowie, later on, when you saw his performances, it was so cool because he got old consciously. He just, sorry, I can't read, you know, I can't read this anymore, getting old, eyes are failing. It was very open and delightfully vulnerable that way of, oh, Ziggy Stardust has fading eyesight, because he's not Ziggy Stardust anymore. Ziggy Stardust was a character, right? And too often, people who don't understand what artistic personas and things like that do equate the internal attitudes of the artist with the attitudes they're exploring in a given work of art. And this happens in games all the time. They collapse what's on the screen with developer intent. And unless you actually talk to the developer and say, what did you intend? Which I think is important for the record. I think that's an important part of news gathering and video game journalism, is while the game is in development, you go out and talk to the developer about what they intend to do with this game. and then find out if they actually did it. I was able to do that with Halo Wars 2. The review came out last night. You may have missed it because it wasn't a regular time, but I wanted to get out on embargo. But I was able to do that. I was able to talk to Dan Ayoub about what his intentions were for the game and what, you know, niche they were trying to fit into. And I was able to apply that and go, okay, this was what they are attempting to do. Did they do it? And so I was able to say that with certainty. If I didn't have that information, I wouldn't assume. I'd have to say, well, it looks like this is what they're doing, but I can't be sure. And so this is why pre-release access is so important, and actually allowing journalists to get in there and talk to people and have analysts get into and to collect this, because intent, measure outcome against intent, because no game is for everyone. And the important thing about game reviews is letting people know, not so much good game, bad game, but is this a game that you are going to enjoy spending your money on? And if somebody doesn't like real-time strategy games, they are never going to like Halo Wars. And that's the difficult thing with this game, is they're trying to, Dan flat out told me they were trying to overcome this intimidation barrier to RTS. They love real-time strategy games as a storytelling medium, and they want to share that with people who may not have tried that. Now, because they did that, they have to cut a certain depth of gameplay that a really experienced RTS fan is going to expect, and the Creative Assembly knows that. But that's not who they're going for. They're trying to be baby's first RTS, right? And I think there is a space for that. And did they accomplish that? Yeah, I think they did. They're just hamstrung. You know, the problem is they have to make a game playable on console with gamepad. And they do that by the skin of their teeth. You can get through the campaign, but I don't know if that is really an enjoyable experience. In order, you need that keyboard and mouse. And somebody who is just a casual, you know, player, they're a console player, they're not going to have a Windows 10 PC. So I feel like Halo Wars 2 kind of got shafted because, and I said this in my review, Xbox One was promising keyboard and mouse compatibility, and it's not out yet. So, and this is pretty much what I said in my review. So, is it a good game? Is it a bad game? It does certain things very, very well. It does certain things not so well. And how do you assign a number on that? I don't. And this is why I say review-ish instead of reviews. Take what I am saying, think for yourself. Please, think for yourself. And this is why I don't understand why people go crazy when someone drops an opinion. Because no one is forcing you to agree with that opinion. And this is something I'm still trying to understand, and you guys have helped a lot explaining to me the sensitivities behind certain topics. Certain topics I totally understand right now. But others, like, you don't like a review, who cares? Don't read that reviewer anymore. There are dozens of other reviewers you can read and get your opinions. No reviewer is for everybody. That's why back in the day where you found one you liked and read their reviews and maybe compared them with a couple others were the way people engage with reviews. Not, oh, what is the aggregate score on Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic? Oh, I look at the number. I don't read a single review. That's not helpful. That encourages gaming that doesn't try to be different. It's like, it's this issue when I used to dance competitively or gymnastics, or figure skating as well. Some judges reward a clean program with lesser difficulty as opposed to somebody who tries to innovate but may stumble a bit on the landing. And right now, the judges in gaming are ironically rewarding people who say in that safe space, okay, we're not going to do anything terribly innovative with the gameplay, but it's going to be crazy pretty, and the voice acting is going to be amazing, and the story's going to not not threaten the feels of the demographic that's overrepresented in game reviews. That's how you get a 10 out of 10 in gaming, by playing it exceptionally safe and blowing your budget on graphics and sound. And I'm an audiophile, I love good sound, but graphics are driving up the cost of games. And I find myself enjoying the more divisive games who, oh, isn't that interesting? They tried to do something new. But I gotta make that clear in my reviews, because not everybody else, like, people who have to buy these games, they don't go, oh, wow, I'm gonna eat octopus mixed with bear. That's interesting. I wouldn't have it again. They want a game that they're gonna play the crap out of and love, because games are expensive and their money's worth something. And you have to be aware of that as a game critic. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about, I think I covered everything. Oh, the Beyonce thing. I always kind of talked about Beyonce hatred. The other thing I noticed is people complaining that, oh, she wasn't about Africa. She was not from Africa, and so she shouldn't be adopting African cultures as her own. And this, I just want to say, guys, the Afro-Caribbean diaspora, these are descendants of families who did not choose to leave Africa. And so go easy on them for that way. Because, yeah, Beyonce did grow up in Texas, but that was because 4 or 5 generations ago, somebody yanked her family off, out of their village and stuck them on a boat to put them in the slave trade. So it's totally fair that her family would want to reconnect, in part because they were punished for practicing their traditional religions. They were made to feel like it was shameful. And for a lot of families, this is an important part of reclaiming their dignity. So go easy there. That's all I'll say there. The last thing was, somebody pointed out, and I thought this was a fair point to add to the discussion of PewDiePie and the whole video thing, that he was part of the Google Maker program before, I think it was Google, before Disney bought it. And yes, that's an important distinction. Still, you have to decide what to do when you're acquired. And acquisitions are a tricky thing in gaming. It happens all the time. Rest in peace, OB, original BioWare. Things do change, and you're not always up to date on the changes. Still, I mean, when companies are acquired in any other form of media, the people involved, they do research on the company. Okay, this is the new hotness. RIP the old hotness. And you try to know where the tolerance is for your existing company. And Disney's reputation and what they do is not a secret, right? And so when you decide to do that, well, you're still contracted to that company, even though they're not the one you signed the contract with, do so at your own peril. I mean, I have been in the past, the old late night show, the company got acquired, and there was a new regime in town. There were 2. And they were apparently, from what I understand, actually fighting over who didn't. It was like a game of hot potato with the property, because both the companies were far more conservative than Chum Television was. And they're like, we don't want the titty show. And they were pushing it back and forth. Never mind, they were treating like it was radioactive the most successful female late night host in Canadian television history, possibly North American television history. Women don't tend to be in late night, and we were outdrawing Letterman and Leno on a little station in Toronto. And they didn't realize that when they were going, no, boobs, 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 boobs. And so there was nothing we could do about that. And we weren't going to change what we're doing, but that's a conscious choice, right? And we're like, okay, clock's ticking on this now. Television changed. Moods change, tastes change. We don't have the same issue on the internet when someone is truly independent. But the minute you sign on that line, you're not independent anymore. So, clarifying, but I don't think it really changes the overall main point. But clarity is important, and it's an important detail, so I said that. So I gave you guys a couple of questions to answer. And thanks. Have a good weekend. Might be back with Momo Monday. Have to check. A game could come off of embargo then again. So it might be gameplay, but I'll try to include the picture. I'll have like Momo's thoughts on the game as well, I guess, because I know you guys love your Momo. You need your Momo fix. Okay, have a great weekend. Stay warm. Stay dry. Bye.